My name is Sydney. I am 11 years old, and last summer my mother went to Europe for a month and left me standing in our kitchen with a single, crumpled $20 bill pressed into my palm. "See, you're independent now," she said, smiling brightly as she dragged her suitcase toward the door. "You're not a baby anymore. Just order food if you need to." Independent. That was her word, not mine. I stood there staring at the bill. $20. Not a plan. Not a babysitter. Not even a real goodbye. Just a rushed kiss on my forehead, the sound of suitcase wheels rattling down the driveway, and then the front door closing behind her. "I'll be fine," I said out loud to the empty hallway, as if saying it might magically make it true. My hands were shaking. There was no one else in the house. No one who could cook. No one who even knew I had been left there alone. I tried to convince myself this was some kind of challenge, something I could win. Day one, I told myself, I will prove I can handle this. I lined up the few cans in the pantry. I opened the fridge, already half empty, and pushed my fear down as far as it would go. If my mom thought I was independent, then maybe she should see what that really looked like. Because as the month moved forward, the $20 would disappear, the food would run out, and the silence inside our house would turn into something darker than loneliness. And when they finally came back, what my mom saw made her whisper words she would never be able to take back. No, this cannot be happening. The first problem hit me barely 10 minutes after the taxi pulled away. My mom had tossed a shiny emergency credit card onto the counter like that solved everything. There was just one problem. It wasn't activated, and I didn't know the PIN. I found that out standing in the doorway with my phone in my hand, watching every food app reject the card again and again. Declined. 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 So it was just me, a useless card, and $20. On day one, I made it a game. I sliced bread as thin as I could. I spread peanut butter so carefully it barely covered the surface. I told myself real survivors knew how to stretch things. I even joked in my head that this would make a great story someday. By day 3, it stopped being funny. The pantry looked like a before picture in a hunger documentary. A couple of cans I didn't know how to open without hurting myself. A box of cereal with more air than food. A jar of pickles I hated. My stomach growled so loud it embarrassed me, even though no one else was there. I turned the TV on and let random shows play just for the noise. Silence made the house feel like it was watching me. I opened my mom's laptop and stared at her work emails stacked neatly, like they mattered more than anything else. At some point, I grabbed my notebook and wrote one word at the top of a page in big, shaky letters. Evidence. Under it I wrote, "Left alone at 11. $20. No food plan. No check-ins." I didn't know exactly what I would do with it, but writing it down changed something inside me. If they thought I was old enough to be alone, then I was old enough to remember everything. To record everything. To show someone, one day, how they chose a vacation over me. I picked up my phone and opened the video app. Day 3, I whispered to the camera. "I'm still alone. The card doesn't work. I ate the last decent thing in the fridge yesterday." My face looked smaller than I expected. "If you're seeing this," I said after a pause, "it means someone finally asked what happened to me." I saved the clip and locked my phone, my heart pounding. Part of me hoped no one would ever see it. Another part of me wanted that video to explode in my mom's face when she came home. By day 5, hunger felt like fog inside my head. I got dizzy standing up too fast. I ate dry cereal from the bag and tried to make every handful last. I opened my notebook again. Day 5. Still no call from Mom. Not even a text. Then another line. "If I disappear, this proves it wasn't my fault." That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about what would happen to them when people finally found out what they'd done. On day 7, my body felt weak, but my anger felt sharp. I stood at the front window and watched other people's lives go by. Kids on bikes, a dog barking at a delivery truck, a couple walking past with coffee cups. Normal parents. Normal lives. I looked at our empty driveway and whispered, "You chose Europe over me. Do you know what that's going to cost you when someone finds out?" Then the doorbell rang. I froze. No one ever rang our doorbell. Packages were dropped off. Kids knocked. The bell rang again, followed by 3 sharp knocks. My heart slammed in my chest as I crept toward the door. If you were 11, starving and completely alone, would you open it or pretend you weren't home? I cracked the door open. A man in a green jacket stood on the porch. My school's emblem was stitched onto his chest. "Hi, Sydney," he said gently. "I'm Mr. Hughes. I've been trying to reach your parents." My instinct was to lie, to say everything was fine. Instead, I stepped back. "They're in Europe," I said, "for a month." His face changed instantly. "A month," he repeated, "and who's staying with you?" I swallowed. "Just me." He sat down at the table, suddenly serious. "Sydney, how long have you been alone?" "Almost a week." "Do you have enough food?" I let out a small, bitter laugh. "They left $20 and a credit card that doesn't work." "That's not okay," he said quietly. "This is neglect." Neglect. The word felt heavy. "What happens if someone finds out?" I asked. "Child services," he said. "Investigations, consequences." Consequences. I nodded slowly. "For what they did to me." He didn't argue. He didn't excuse them. He believed me. When my neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, arrived, her face crumpled as she took in the empty fridge, the notebook, my shaking hands. "Why didn't you come to me?" she asked. "Because I didn't want to look weak," I said. She shook her head. "Asking for help isn't weakness, it's survival." That day, adults finally listened. They saw the empty shelves. They read my notes. They watched my videos. When my parents came home early, they walked into a room full of proof. My notebook lay open on the table. Evidence. My phone played the video from day 3. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered, "this can't be happening." But it was. The investigation didn't scream or explode like a movie. It was quieter, sharper. Supervised visits, counseling, no unsupervised custody. They didn't lose me forever. They lost the right to pretend nothing happened. That summer, I learned how to cook real food. I learned that help isn't weakness. I learned that the truth can be the strongest kind of revenge there is. Not yelling. Not breaking things. Just refusing to stay invisible. So tell me this. If you were 11 years old and left alone with $20 while your parents chased freedom, would you hide the story to protect their image? Or would you do what I did and let the truth become the consequence they never expected? The house felt different after that day. Not louder. Not safer. Just exposed. Like a place where secrets had finally been ripped out into the light and left there to dry. I didn't go back to living with my parents. Not really. I slept at Mrs. Johnson's house in a guest room that smelled like clean sheets and lavender detergent. At night, I stared at the ceiling and waited for the familiar panic to return, the feeling that I was alone and no one was coming. But someone always came. Mrs. Johnson knocked every morning. "Breakfast is ready, Sydney." No guessing. No stretching crumbs. No pretending hunger was normal. At school, teachers stopped looking past me. Mr. Hughes checked in every day, not like a counselor ticking a box, but like someone making sure I still existed. The caseworker came and went with files tucked under her arm, asking questions that no one had ever bothered to ask before. "How do you sleep? What do you worry about? What do you need to feel safe?" No one had ever asked me what I needed. My parents tried to contact me through official channels. Long messages written carefully, like apology letters designed to pass inspection. Your mom misses you so much. Your dad is devastated. They didn't mean for this to happen. I read them without replying, because intentions didn't fill an empty fridge. And regret didn't sit with me during those nights. I counted hours instead of sheep. The first supervised visit happened 2 weeks later. A small room, beige walls, a table bolted to the floor, a woman from the department sitting quietly in the corner with a clipboard. My parents walked in together, holding hands like they were the ones who needed protection. My mom rushed toward me and stopped when the supervisor raised her hand. "Please sit." My mom looked at me like I had personally destroyed her life. "You could have called," she said immediately. "You could have told us you were struggling." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. "I did," I said. "I asked who would be staying with me. You laughed." She opened her mouth, then closed it. My dad leaned forward. "We trusted you." "No," I replied. "You abandoned me and called it trust." The room went silent. The supervisor wrote something down. After the visit, Mrs. Johnson didn't ask questions. She just made soup and let me eat in peace. That night, I added a new page to my notebook. Day after supervised visit. They still think this is about intentions. I know it's about impact. Weeks passed. My parents attended classes, parenting workshops, therapy sessions. They learned words like neglect and emotional abandonment and risk assessment. I learned something too. I learned that adults panic when children stop protecting them. One afternoon, my mom sent a message through the caseworker. She wants to apologize directly. She wants to explain. I agreed. We met again in the same beige room. This time she cried. "I didn't think," she said. "I just needed time. I was so tired. Everyone said you were mature." I watched her carefully. "You never asked if I wanted to be mature," I said. "You just decided I had to be." Her crying got louder. "I thought independence was a gift." "It's not a gift when it's forced," I replied. "It's abandonment with better branding." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. And that hurt more than the hunger ever had. At school, kids whispered. Some knew. Some guessed. Some made up stories. I didn't correct them. For once, my life wasn't something I had to explain. One day, Emma finally texted back. "I heard something weird. Are you okay?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing. "No. But I'm safe now." She replied almost instantly. "I'm sorry I didn't notice." That message mattered more than she knew. Months later, the court made its decision. Supervised custody only. Mandatory check-ins. No extended travel without approved care plans. My parents didn't lose me completely. They lost the illusion that love without responsibility was enough. The last night before summer ended, I sat on Mrs. Johnson's porch, watching the sun sink into the street. "Do you hate them?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "I hate what they chose," I said, "and I hate that I had to become proof instead of just being a kid." She nodded. "That's fair." I closed my notebook for the first time in a long while. The word evidence was still there, but it didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt finished. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with punishment. Mine ended with something quieter. Awareness. Because the truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just stands there, undeniable, waiting for adults to finally stop looking away. And if you're wondering whether my parents ever truly understood what they did, I don't know. But I do know this. They will never again mistake my silence for strength. And I will never again confuse survival with independence. Life didn't snap back into place after that. There was no magical moment where everything felt normal again, because I had learned something important. Normal, the way my parents used it, was just another word for ignoring cracks until something broke. I stayed with Mrs. Johnson longer than anyone expected. At first, people said it like it was temporary. Just for now. Until things settle. Until your parents prove themselves. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and no one rushed to change anything. Not even me. I got used to small things that felt huge. Someone reminding me to bring a jacket. Someone asking what I wanted for dinner and actually waiting for the answer. Someone noticing when I was quiet instead of praising me for being low maintenance. I realized how often adults confuse silence with strength. At school, I started doing better. Not because I tried harder, but because my brain wasn't constantly calculating food, fear, and time. When you're not worried about surviving, you suddenly have space to think. Mr. Hughes told me once, "You're different lately." "Better?" I asked. "Clearer," he said, "like you're finally allowed to take up space." That stayed with me. My parents kept trying. They sent letters now, handwritten, like that made them more honest. They talked about therapy and growth and how much they'd learned. They talked about how embarrassing it had been, how hard it was to explain everything to friends and coworkers. They rarely talked about me. During another supervised visit, my dad asked, "Do you know how hard this has been for us?" I looked at him and felt something strange. "Nothing." "I know how hard it was for me," I said. "That's the difference." The supervisor didn't look up, but her pen paused. One afternoon, the caseworker asked me a question no one had asked before. "What do you want, Sydney?" "Not what's best. Not what's fair. Not what's easiest. What do you want?" I thought about my old house, the empty fridge, the quiet nights. I thought about Mrs. Johnson's kitchen, the steady routines, the feeling of being seen without having to perform. "I want stability," I said. "Not promises, proof." She nodded slowly. "That's a very adult answer." I didn't smile. Being adult had cost me too much already. When the final review meeting came, everyone sat around a long table. Files stacked neatly, notes highlighted, decisions already leaning in one direction before anyone spoke. My parents looked smaller again, not angry this time, just tired. The supervisor explained the outcome carefully. Extended placement. Continued supervision. Gradual rebuilding, if possible. My mom reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. But I didn't hold on either. Afterward, as we walked out, she whispered, "I never thought you'd turn into someone who could do this." I looked up at her. "I didn't turn into this," I said. "You left me alone long enough that I had to become it." She cried again. I didn't. That night, I packed my notebook away into the bottom of a drawer. I didn't throw it out. I didn't rip the pages. I kept it. Not as a weapon. Not as leverage. As a reminder. That silence protects the people who cause harm. And truth protects the people who survive it. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that first day. The $20 bill, the word independent, the way my mom smiled like she was giving me a gift. I wonder how different everything would be if just one adult had asked a single question earlier. "Are you really okay?" But then I realized something else. Maybe this didn't happen because no one cared. Maybe it happened because caring takes effort, and effort is easier to spend on yourself. I don't hate my parents. I just see them clearly now. And clarity is something you don't lose once you gain it. So if you're listening to this and thinking, "This could never happen around me," ask yourself something honestly. Who are you praising for being strong when they're really just being quiet? And who are you calling independent when they're actually just alone? Time kept moving, even when nothing felt settled. That surprised me the most. I thought everything would pause after something like that, like life would wait until the adults figured it out. But it didn't. School continued. Seasons changed. People adjusted to a new version of me as if this had always been normal. And maybe, for me, it was becoming normal. Living with Mrs. Johnson stopped feeling like staying over. It started feeling like living. My toothbrush stayed in the same cup every night. My shoes stayed by the same door. My backpack hung on the same hook without anyone asking why it was still there. No one counted the days out loud anymore. One evening, while we were washing dishes together, Mrs. Johnson said casually, "You know, you don't have to earn your place here." I froze, hands still in the soapy water. "I know," I said, but my voice didn't sound convinced. She glanced at me. "You're used to being valued for how easy you are, not for who you are." That hit harder than anything my parents had said. At school, a teacher once praised me in front of the class. "Sydney never causes trouble. She's so independent." The word made my stomach twist. After class, I stayed behind. "I don't like that word," I told her quietly. She looked surprised. "Independent." "Yes," I said. "It usually means no one is helping." She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away somewhere important. I started speaking up more after that. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. When I didn't understand something, I said so. When I needed help, I asked. Every time I did, it felt like breaking a rule I'd been living under my whole life. Nothing terrible happened. The world didn't fall apart. People didn't get angry. That realization changed me. My parents were still part of the process, like distant figures orbiting the edges of my life. Supervised visits continued. Sometimes they tried too hard, bringing gifts, acting cheerful, like enthusiasm could erase memory. Other times, they were quiet, almost afraid of saying the wrong thing. During one visit, my mom asked, "Do you miss us?" I thought carefully before answering. "I miss who I needed you to be," I said. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and for once didn't argue. That felt like progress. The caseworker asked me one day if I wanted to start therapy. "For you," she said, "not because anything is wrong with you, but because something wrong happened to you." That distinction mattered. In therapy, I learned how often kids blame themselves for adult failures. How easy it is to mistake neglect for independence and silence for maturity. I learned that anger isn't bad, it's information. And that grief doesn't always come from loss. Sometimes it comes from realizing something was never really there. One afternoon, while cleaning my room, I found the $20 bill tucked inside an old book, the same one my mom had handed me that first day. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it back. Not because I needed it, but because I didn't want to forget what it represented. How little can feel like everything when you're small and alone. How adults can underestimate damage because they don't feel it themselves. Mrs. Johnson knocked softly and leaned against the doorframe. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm just remembering." She smiled gently. "Remembering is okay. Living there is." That night, I wrote one last entry in my notebook. Not evidence. Not accusations. Just truth. I am not difficult. I was unattended. I am not independent. I was unsupported. I am not dramatic. I was hurt. I closed the notebook and didn't open it again. Because some stories aren't meant to keep going forever. They're meant to teach you how to stop repeating them. And if one day my parents ask how all of this changed me, I'll tell them this. It taught me that love without presence is just a story people tell themselves. And that being a child doesn't mean being weak. It means you're supposed to be protected. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Check on the quiet ones. Question the praise that sounds like relief. And never confuse a child's silence with strength. Because sometimes, the bravest thing a kid can do is let the truth be heard.